Hi YouTube, Darth here. This is Yes or No, a weapon review series where I give a clear and concise answer as to what weapons you should be using in Battlefield. Today's weapon is the MP18, a submachine gun and the first unlock for the assault class in Battlefield 1. There are 3 variants available for the MP18, including the trench, optical, and experimental variations. I chose this weapon today because of requests and the interesting burst mechanic of the experimental variant. But should you be using the MP18, yes or no? No. The MP18 is a fine introductory weapon and particularly useful if you have problems controlling the recoil and spread of the Automatico or Hellriegel. Otherwise, it's not very powerful when compared to its counterparts. But before I get deep into its shortcomings, let's talk about where it makes itself useful. With a starting spread of 0.2 to 0.3 degrees, depending on the variant, the MP18 has the least starting spread of the SMGs. This is particularly helpful for landing the first few bullets from this weapon, which might appeal to you if you are particularly savvy about headshots or if you're targeting head glitchers. Secondly, the aimed first shot spread multiplier of the MP18 is the lowest among the SMGs at just 3 to 4 degrees depending on the variant, meaning that first bullet increases your spread by a factor that is the lowest of all the automatic weapons. Again, good for keeping your bullets on target when combined with long burst behavior. Keeping the MP18 on target isn't terribly difficult with its low sustained recoil. The recoil per shot is 0.38 degrees up and a left-right deviation of 0.23 degrees, with 0.161 left-right for the experimental. The first shot recoil multiplier is somewhat high at 2.1 times, and why I say the sustained recoil of this weapon is better than the initial recoil. There's also the experimental variant of the MP18, which has a somewhat unique burst fire capability. This 3-shot burst variant transfers the first shot recoil multiplier and the first shot spread multiplier to the third shot, meaning that the first 3 bullets only suffer from recoil, initial spread, and regular per shot spread. This makes these 3 bullets the most accurate automatic bullets in the game and is particularly effective for landing headshots. Aimed for the neck to get 1 to the body and 2 to the head, enough to drop any target closer than 18 meters. That's about the extent of the MP18's prowess. If you're confident that you can harness the accuracy of this weapon to land near perfect accuracy headshot after headshot, then you could probably do pretty well with the MP18. I don't think most people can do that, not closer than 18 meters, certainly not heads up, and if you are that person, congratulations, this gun is for you. But for everybody else, you're going to want to know about the shortcoming. The damage model of the MP18 unleashes 23 maximum damage, 13.5 minimum. The weapon starts dropping off at just 15 meters and reaches its minimum damage at 38.75 meters. This puts the engagement range of the MP18 squarely in the CQB range. 3 bullets minimum to kill, that'd be 2 headshots and a body shot, and at most 8. So it has to compete with the Automatico, Hellriegel, and shotguns, weapons whose time to kill outclass the MP18. With a rate of fire of 550 rounds per minute, that puts the minimum time to kill of the MP18 at 440 milliseconds. That is provided you don't land those 2 to 3 headshots. By comparison, the Automatico has a time to kill of 270 milliseconds and the Hellriegel is 373. The 440 millisecond time of the MP18 even puts it behind the average time to kill of the Medic semi-automatic rifles and just slightly better than the average LMG. Translation, if you can't land headshots, you're going to be in a bad place up close. The first shot recoil multiplier of the MP18 is relatively high at 2.1 times, meaning the first shot kicks the upwards recoil 2.1 times harder than any subsequent shot. Again, if you're using the MP18 experimental variant, this happens on the third shot. The FSRM of the MP18 isn't the worst in the game, but being somewhat high, it does deny the player the ability to do short bursts without major penalty and makes aimed fire at even medium range difficult to perform. This is another feature of the weapon that encourages longer bursts. The MP18, across all its variants, has the worst spread decrease in the game. At 2.7 degrees per second, the MP18 won't reset its recoil for over a full third of a second after firing. Again and again, we're seeing another feature of this weapon that favors longer bursts and punishes micro or short bursts. So here's the thing I never quite understood about these highly accurate CQB weapons. The performance envelope of the MP18 firmly restricts it to somewhat longer bursts in close quarters. Aimed fire benefits really only come into play at mid-range and beyond, where the damage model of the MP18 makes the gun impotent. Landing 8 bullets on a target is a major chore, and unless your target is a moron, they're going to get out of the way in the time required to land that kill shot. The accuracy only benefits headshot phenoms in CQB, which is not easy when you're in CQB and have to 1. Draw your sights, which adds more time by the way, and 2. Land essentially 3 headshots on a small fast-moving target. who is also probably shooting at you. If you both draw at the same time and the other target has a faster killing CQB weapon, you're almost certainly going to lose. This is the same frustration I had in Battlefield 4 with the UMP9 and G36C, two weapons that were clearly made for accuracy in weapon categories where their damage model didn't support what they were trying to do, and where they were outclassed entirely by the alternatives. The MP18 has that same problem, it's simply outclassed in its defined range by the Automatico, Hellriegel, and Shotgun. I can see niche appeal with players that prize accuracy and control above all else, but I really think the weapons I just mentioned play more to the assault class's strengths. The MP18 tries to set itself apart, but it really just ends up being the black sheep. There's a couple of ways you can approach the MP18 depending on the variant, but its general recoil pattern is 0.38 degrees up, 0.23 left, and right. Somewhat less for the experimental version at 0.161 left-right. In either case, this is going to take the recoil of the weapon straight up and form a slight V-shaped pattern. That FSRM of 2.1 is going to make the first bullet skip upwards quite a bit, and the spread multiplier of 3 to 4 will also make the first bullet's initial spread quite a bit more than the following bullets. The general strategy for controlling the non-experimental variants is to pull straight down. The kill shot for the MP18 is 5 to 8 bullets depending on range, so you're going to be pulling about that many bullets out of your gun in bursts. The further away your target, the more bursting that will be required, but in general, you're going to find the MP18 very ineffective outside CQB. Inside of 15 to 20 meters, if you have the trench variant, you should almost always be firing in hipfire. The MP18 trench is probably one of the strongest hipfire weapons in the game, beaten only by the shotguns and Automatico. For the experimental variant, your weapon is going to fire in 3-round bursts. This makes it somewhat more difficult to predictably control. You're trading some efficacy in close quarters for more accuracy, so in addition to controlling the recoil of the weapon, you're going to have to consider your body position carefully. Do you go for headshots or do you go for hipfire body shots? Let's talk tactics. The MP18 doesn't kill as fast as the other assault weapons, and it's not as good at range as most other classes' weapons. With a slightly better velocity than other SMGs, it's got the power to get bullets out to mid-range, but your targets have to be really unaware to get caught like that. No, the strength of the MP18 is split between hipfire and close-range accuracy for killing head glitchers and getting headshots. That's the mentality you need while playing with the MP18, shooting from the hip or shooting for the head. If the target surprises you in CQB or your head's up against another assault, you're probably going to want to go for the hipfire. The trench variant is the strongest at this role, but I'll talk more about that in the next section. If you have a moment, or your target isn't in a race against you to draw, then drawing your sights and aiming for the neck is not a bad way to score a couple of quick headshots. This seems like some niche behavior for the weapon and not really my style. I suspect only players who are really committed to playing exclusively with the MP18 will find headshots to be the winning strategy. Again, why not just choose an Automatico and simply remove the difficulty and stress from the equation entirely? But this video is about the MP18. Finally, if all else fails, you can always charge your enemy with the bayonet. Always a strong option when you have the drop on your enemy. Almost always going to get you killed by any nearby enemies. There are 3 variants for the MP18, the optical, experimental, and trench. Compared to other variants, the optical variant has better aimed on-the-move accuracy and has slightly better spread on shots past the third. The experimental variant has the attraction of having the most accurate first 3 bullets, probably the most accurate in the game for automatic. Finally, the trench variant has the best hipfire of the 3. It has the benefit of having no first shot spread multiplier for hipfire. So which variant did I prefer? I'm actually split on this one, but in general I gravitated to the trench variant. As I said, patience for headshots really isn't my style, and I felt like having better hipfire generally let me get the drop on enemies in heads-up situations. That being said, if you have a strong desire to try to land headshots, the experimental variant is probably going to be more to your style. I don't think the hipfire is particularly bad on the experimental, but the burst fire jam is still evident in Battlefield 1. That happens when you try to fire the weapon too fast, and it'll sometimes skip a beat, which is fatal in close quarters. As for customizing my weapons, the default sights and zoom distances are relatively acceptable. You may find it desirable to dial in the range of the zoom on the experimental or optical versions, as the high first shot recoil multiplier doesn't play nice with the higher zoom level. Now for the bayonet, you have some choices here. You can keep it equipped, but you suffer a slight penalty to readying your weapon out of a sprint. If you're looking to get a bit faster draw time with either the experimental or trench variant, ditch the bayonet, or stop sprinting. However, I find the ability to charge on demand to be just useful enough to not care enough to drop the bayonet. So the MP18 is a niche weapon. I think it appeals nicely to players who prize accuracy or controllability, particularly newer players or players who have a hard time controlling the accuracy of faster killing assault weapons. but there's also potential for experienced players. If you can master landing headshots consistently with the MP18, it has some dangerous potential. In general though, I find it's outclassed by every other assault weapon in its ideal CQB range. The MP18 is not the most awful weapon ever, but it definitely has shortcomings that I'm not a fan of. So for me, it's a no. If you're looking for my preferred assault weapon, I'm currently in love with the Hellriegel. It's not the fastest killing weapon, but it certainly has a time to kill better than most of the other class's primary weapon. And 60 rounds per magazine, so it just keeps killing. If you must absolutely kill your target first, you'll probably want a shotgun, and my current favorite is the M97. Point and shoot and pretty much anything in CQB dies. If not, the follow-up shot isn't far away. That's it for this episode of Yes or No. If there's something you think I missed, or if you have a particularly different take on the MP18, please let me know in the comments below. If you have a weapon you'd like to see on this series, please leave a comment indicating which weapon. If you like what you saw, please be sure to force choke that like button. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.